Hello to my third grade writing students. This video is the video that you should be watching on Friday, April 17th. This video is to help model how to expand your introduction for your picture writing assignment. So let's look at what we have done, what we did yesterday. Yesterday, you should have filled out this planner to help you come up with a narrative writing for this picture. Now, if you have not done this part yet, I would pause this video and look at yesterday's video that is posted to the Google Classroom and fill this out along with me in that video first, and then come back to this video and press play and then do this lesson. So today what we're going to do is we're only focusing on the introduction. Your job today is to expand your introduction ideas into a beginning of a story with, let me show you. This is how we're going to expand your, this is how you're going to expand your introduction today. So you just repeat after me. I'm not going to write out the whole learning target. I think this is better and easier to understand in a checklist format. So that's what this is. I can expand my intro by adding thoughts, feelings, action, and dialogue. And remember, with dialogue, our punctuation for dialogue are quotation marks. So let's go ahead and look at what we have. So you should definitely have your who, what, when, and where. And remember, we put it into a way that kind of makes more sense as we say the when, the who, the where, and then the what. So what I'm going to do, and so this is your sheet that you should be, or this is your page that you should be looking at. And then down here is where you're going to, it says title and by, indent and start your story here. So your title, I don't know what my title is going to be yet, but I think it's going to be something called A Bump in the Night. Gotta capitalize it. Bump in the Night. A Bump in the Night by Mrs. Hopkins. So make sure you put your name on that. And it says indent your story and start here. And then I also added cops. Cops is something that some people think is a really good thing to do at the very end of their writing. I like to do it as I go. So for every sentence, I reread it and I make sure that I have a capital. It is organized and it makes sense. I have the correct punctuation and that I have the spelling correct. So what I'm going to do, just to show you guys that this is our introduction, is I'm going to write this paragraph in green. And just so I don't have to keep scrolling up and scrolling down, I'm just going to copy this. Oops, let's try again. You highlight it, you two-finger click, you press copy, and then you come down here and just underneath where I'm going to type, so this is where I'm going to type, I'm going to just press enter a few times so I have a nice big space, and then I'm going to press paste. And all that does is it just brings this information down here so I don't have to keep scrolling back up and down. You can choose to do that if you want to. If you like scrolling up and down, you do not have to. All right, so thinking about a hook. So if we think about, I just want to show you guys what I have here. If we think about this plan, and you still should think about the way that you plan for a narrative with this, because this really helps you guys to think about your hook, your introduction, that your events are the big things and your red are your stopping and thinking. And this also has, what I like about this is it also has spaces for your transition phrases and also a transition phrase for your conclusion. So instead of a transition phrase at the beginning, because we're not transitioning from anything, we are going to start with a hook. So for my story, and I'm just going to go over my story elements very quickly. When? This happens in the middle of the night. Who does it happen to? Mr. Wilson. Where is he? He is in his home, in bed. And then what is it? He hears a noise that wakes him up. So that's my introduction. And I have to make sure I have all of these pieces and parts. And I think for my introduction, it makes a lot of sense to start with a hook that is an onomatopoeia. I know we love that word. Let's all say it together. Onomatopoeia. An onomatopoeia is a sound word, but it also should be in, if we're thinking about our punctuation, should be capitalized because it's the first thing that I'm saying. It should be indented. Make sure that you press tab here. And then we're going to put a quotation mark because it is a sound within the story. So it's something that's being heard within the story. Boom, bam, comma, crash. I'm going to put an exclamation point and then I'm going to be done with that. So this is my first, it's kind of like a sentence, but it's really just a quotation. It's not quite a sentence, but that's okay. Boom, bam, crash, exclamation point and quotation. Now I'm going to say when it was. It was 3 a.m. when who? Mr. Wilson heard, let's see, when Mr. was woken abruptly by a noise coming from downstairs. Okay, so I kind of have all of this. I have when it was, who it was, where it was, kind of. I'm going to expand on this idea, and then what it was. It was a noise that woke him up. So the next sentence, I'm going to just expand with some actions. So remember your checklist, and you can write these 4 things down so to make sure that you've got them. I'm going to start with an action. I'm thinking about if I were to be woken up in the middle of the night, what's the first thing that I would do? And we're going to apply that to Mr. Wilson. So he fumbled around in the dark to try to find the switch on his lamp. And I want them to really see where this lamp is. So I'm going to give the lamp a place. He fumbled around in the dark to try to find the switch on his lamp, on his bedside lamp. Good. So now that gives a real clear picture that he's still laying in bed and he's fumbling around. He can't find it because it's in the dark. So there's an action. And I'm just going to do COPS as I go along. Capital, the organization, I read through it twice. I've got punctuation, and I don't have any spelling mistakes because they would be underlined in red. How nice is that? So here we go. Next sentence. So now I want to do a thought. If I heard something in the middle of the night, I would want to know what that was, and that's what my brain would be saying to me. So he thought, comma. Now this is where you would want to use your quotation marks. So this is a thought, and it's also dialogue, because what he's thinking in his head are his words that he's actually saying in the story. So we will go ahead and put a quotation beginning here. What in the world could that sound be? Question mark, end quotation. So here we go. Let's go through COPS. I do have a capital here. I've got a capital here. If he's asking a question and it's a complete sentence, that also needs to be a capital. And organization, he thought, what in the world could that be? Punctuation, I've got a comma here. I've got my beginning quote. My punctuation is inside the quote. And then I've got my end quote. And then you guys probably notice that I do have a spelling mistake because it's very obvious with the red underline. So all I have to do is 2-finger tap onto my mouse pad, and then it says, did you mean thought? Yes, I did mean thought. I didn't mean throt. That's not a word. He thought, what in the world could that sound be? Okay, so now we're going to do a feeling. So let's look at our checklist. I've got a thought. I've got an action. I do have dialogue through a thought, so that's fine. I'm going to leave it like that. Totally fine. And then I'm going to think about his feelings. So I could say he was scared, but that's a little boring. So let's think about what happens to our bodies when we get scared. When we get scared, physiological responses start happening in our bodies. So a couple of times when I've been very scared in my life, my stomach starts to do kind of flips, like it has butterflies in it. I also have had things where my palms get sweaty, or when I feel like I'm going to get in trouble for something, my body starts sweating or my heart starts beating really, really fast. So instead of saying he was scared, we are going to describe how he's feeling through his body. Okay? So here we go. What in the world can that sound be? Here's my next sentence. His stomach started to flip, and his palms were sweating, He could feel his heart quicken. So now let's add another thought in. He knew he had to go downstairs and check out what the noise was. So I had to kind of add that because it has to go into my next, he knew he had to go downstairs because it has to make sense for my story. So I'm setting up the rest of my story. Okay. So let's go ahead and go through with cops. So he could feel his heart quicken. Okay, I've got a capital. That makes sense. I've got a punctuation. There's no spelling. He knew he had to go downstairs and check out what the noise was. Okay, so I've got capital. My organization is not right. This is not the right word. It's showing me in blue that you've got the wrong word. He knew. Look, if I click on that, they're like, did you mean knew? Yes, I did. Thank you very much. He knew he had to go downstairs and check out what the noise was. So I'm going to add a little bit more description. And the reason why I'm going to do that is if I look back at my plan, the whole first part is that he hears the sound. And I'm kind of going over a lot of that right now. But part of this is that he creeps silently out of bed. Okay, so I'm really going to build that part up next time we write. But I also want to be real clear. He knew he had to get out of bed, and go downstairs and check it out, the noise. Okay, so I think now I have an organization problem, which happens a lot when you add things into a sentence. So let's go ahead and read this and see how I can organize it better. He knew he had to go get out of bed. Well, I spelled that wrong. Out of bed and go downstairs and check out what that noise was. So I need to get rid of this word and. If I'm listing three things in a sentence, the first two have a comma between them. So get out of bed, go downstairs, and then the second and the third thing have an and in between, and check out what that noise was. Okay, so that, I'm going to add one more thing just to build up my story. Mr. Wilson, if you remember from my plan, what happens at the end of this is that it's his daughter's hamster. So mine has a happy ending. With this, I have to kind of talk about his daughter is somebody in the house. So I have to introduce that character. I have to say that. Now, I didn't really come up with that until the end of my story, so it wasn't really part of my brainstorming introduction. But you want to think about the plan as a whole, especially when you're making a story that makes sense from beginning to end. Okay, so his daughter did not hear the sound and was still sleeping in the bedroom next door. All right, so let's go ahead and do cops for this final thing. Something's wrong with it here. So there's a capital. Let's see if it's organized. His daughter did not hear the sound and was still sleeping in the bedroom next door. Punctuation, I've got that. And then I don't know what this is. Let's go ahead and say, oh, next door is 2 words. That's why. So now I've fixed that. Okay, so let's go over your learning target. You may pause this here if you would like to and use this kind of as your guide. Your learning target today was to expand your introduction, and that says intro. Sorry, it's a little messy. To expand your intro, you should have your where, your who, your when, and your what. You should have those 4 things, and you should also be expanding them with thoughts, feelings, actions, and dialogue to make yourself have a much more interesting introduction to your story. Okay, I hope this helped you guys. Happy writing today, and I will see you next week. Bye now.